All right, Lee, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
I feel like you're biting through that smile because you've just suffered through the worst of the LA traffic.
Yeah, coming from Vegas but it's an adventure.
It is an adventure. And like you said, the last hour is the word. Like once you come off the 15 and you start going west, then life becomes not worth living anymore. Like I don't mean to make a joke about that, but that's where like I feel like all of the traffic in Southern California is fine until like that last hour, hour and a half before you get to LA and then you just want to shoot yourself.
Yeah, I had to pull off and do some jumping jacks and put on some really great music and got through. And here I am.
I can't wait till all of us are just going to be passengers. Like I've been following these automated taxis, and I actually use them all the time here in LA. Like Waymo has the service, the Google offering, and Waymo's amazing. So you just have a Waymo app, and you call the taxi, and it comes and picks you up, and then it takes you kind of anywhere in the city you want, and you don't have a driver, and it's just complete privacy, and it's actually I find it like super relaxing. So I'm really looking forward to the moment where we don't have to drive anymore.
And that freaks me out. I saw an X-Files episode. It was one of the later ones where have you seen X-Files?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I
Oh,
grew up on Scully and Mulder, yeah,
great, great. So Mulder was in this automated restaurant and it was terrible and he didn't leave a trip. He didn't leave a tip. And so the automated car took him, but because he didn't leave a tip,
Mhm.
it kept bringing him back to the restaurant.
Oh, that's like a Black Mirror
It
episode.
was awful. I was so freaked out. I don't think I could do the automated cab.
Yeah, I think that is a bit of a scary thing. Like, I watched a Black Mirror episode, and that's that crazy show on Netflix they've got, where, you had to watch a certain amount of advertisements, or you had to pay a certain amount before you could sleep. So if you didn't consume enough advertisements in one day or pay to get out of the advertisements, then whatever the ecosystem was that you were living in wouldn't let you sleep. I mean, we're getting close to that.
Okay, so that's a topic I would love to talk about.
Complete.
Because I think I don't know if I'm going off the rails here, we haven't really even jumped in, but, um, I'd love to talk about humanity
Yeah, I think it's in trouble.
and the humanness, right, with AI and all the technology, and I've had some experiences myself, and, it's worrying, and really one of the things that I feel, purposeful about is to really get people connected to their humanity, and that's going to take a conscious effort now because everybody is getting so programmed by the technology.
Yeah. I was listening to, actually, I was in Arizona last week climbing a mountain, and I drove out there and I drove back, and so I had about 6, 7 hours on the road, and I listened to podcasts, as well as making a podcast. But I was listening to a podcast that was, talking about that exact thing, about how people, especially young people these days, are such, fans of technology, and they're so excited about new technology that they actually put the technology at a higher place of importance than their own humanity. And actually, our human body and the biology and what's going on in our brain is actually vastly superior to any technology that exists in this one moment. But because we haven't recognized all of it or figured all of it out yet, we see it as being inferior to ChatGPT or all these technologies that are coming out. And it's and the premise of the person who was, the guest on the podcast, was basically saying that technology is moving so fast that and people are worshiping technology so much that it's going to actually inhibit our own understanding and our own development of our human body and human brain, which is very far from being at its full potential.
Was it Gregg Braden?
I think it was Gregg Braden. Yeah, yeah.
It was a great well,
Yeah.
he's doing the podcast, circuit.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I agree, and I think it's a wake-up call. His book doesn't come out, I don't think, until, January, but, very timely. I think we're here and we're gonna see it. So, we either claim our humanity or we end up being transhuman or whatever that term is that they're using.
Yeah. Or just playing second fiddle to the computers forever.
Well, I think they want to integrate. That's what, whoever they is, that there is going to be there there are those who believe that the integration of technology and humanity is our evolution. and I don't agree.
It'd be an interesting battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think maybe that's the battle that it's going to take for us to wake up.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because I feel like we have been sleepwalking for decades.
Yeah, and we're just getting whipped around by all the programming of whatever duality flavor of the year is to separate people.
Mhm.
And maybe this very topic is the one that is going to wake us all up to fact that we are all human. Doesn't matter what you look like, but we're all human. And for me, with my experiences, I intimately know that that humanity is really the divinity, right? So that's what makes us special. And I don't want to see that go. And I think the more that we use AI and technology, the more we uh, get diverted from our divinity. And that's not a religious word. That's a word just being spiritual, being a spiritual being having a physical experience.
Mhm. Yeah, and Braden was saying like in our body we have all these cells that are basically transistors, and they send and receive messages all the time, and we're basically connected in ways that we can't understand or ways that we can't see. We're connected to each other, and we're connected to our entire natural surrounding, and all these man-made structures that we're building around us, and the way we live in cities is blocking a lot of that communication and that technology that's just inside our bodies, and yeah, just again spending time in nature, spending time with real people. These are the things that make us human.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so you as an adventurer and all these amazing places that you've been to, when you have been in nature, have you had any experiences that you would say, hey, that's kind of a little supernatural or higher consciousness, or have you had any of this?
Definitely higher consciousness. I think I started spending time out in nature because I was struggling living in a big city. Like I was living in Shanghai, China at the time, which was like a city of by the time I left, it was a city of like 30 million people. So it was a lot. And I was just going out for these 2-week treks, 3-week treks out in Tibet, and just not hating myself when I'm out in nature and sleeping like a baby, going to bed with the rhythm of the earth, waking up with the rhythm of the earth, like just being kind of completely engulfed and absorbed by nature. And yeah, it's the best I've ever felt. So I said I should try to figure out other ways how to do this. So then I just made a TV show about trekking and climbing all around the world, and it was a wonderful it was a wonderful journey, and it's still a journey that I take today. And even last week, like I was out and I did this big climb in this mountain in Arizona. It was just spectacular to be outside for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours and out in nature and just enjoying. So
It feeds your soul.
it really does. It's like a vitamin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I just learned about the vitamins of the sun, right? So in my podcast coming down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it is important for us to make the decision, to be conscious about it, to have the pure intention that this is happening, that there's something greater than us that we can connect to, right? And so that's that soul connection, spirit connection, um, God connection, if that's what your belief is. Um, and nature's a great pathway to it.
Hmm. Yeah. I agree. It's pretty special. I love it. Like I love it out there. And then whenever I come back, I just can't wait to go out again. So living in cities is not a natural way for us to exist, I don't think.
No, I can't even imagine living in China. What brought you there?
So I played basketball in university for the University of Toronto, and which was great, 4 years. But because the basketball season, like we play on the weekend, so you play Friday, Saturday, so you miss all of Friday. So we always had to try to have our Fridays off, and then that means we had to schedule all of our classes between Monday and Thursday. And because of that, I had to take some credit at some stage, and the only time I had that was free was like it was like a Thursday at 1 PM or something, and that just happened to be Introduction to Modern China. And that sparked interest, and then I took another China class and another China class, and then by the time I graduated and realized I wasn't good enough to play professional basketball, I was just like, "Well, I'm gonna go to China and see what this place is all about," and I stayed for 18 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was a wild ride. I loved it. It was great while I was there. It got a little hard towards the end, which is part of why I left. But at the beginning, it was just wide open, and it was like the Wild West. It was just fun, and it was really exciting to kind of explore and try to understand the country at a time when it was changing so rapidly.
Now, do you think, I mean, do you believe in synchronicities or do you believe in divine intervention or what I'm getting at is I'm trying to kind of guide you,
Yeah.
because that's a significant change, right, from Canada to living in China for 18 years, and that if you felt comfortable there, do you think that was maybe a past life thing that you got, that you just kind of felt drawn to that area?
I don't know. It's interesting. Like I didn't have a real interest in China until I took that one class, which was kind of serendipitous, the way it kind of appeared in my schedule as being like the only class I could take at that time. And then my professor, Professor Falkenheim, I still remember him. He's a great guy, and he was a great teacher. And I actually went back years later and taught in that class and shared my experiences of living in China because I was a journalist, I was a photographer, I worked for like the New York Times and stuff like that. So I was able to kind of come back and give everyone this kind of like behind the scenes of what is going on in journalism in China. And that was a lot of fun to come back to that class. Divine intervention, I don't know. I think there's something bigger than us that's connecting all of us together, but I don't really recognize like organized religion. But there's definitely like something out there that we are really connected to that we have no idea what's really going on about. I think that's like we're just haven't reached that level of consciousness yet.
Do you think that people are awakening more and more to that connection? And when I'm not talking about religion, I am talking about exactly what you're saying, that there is this higher consciousness, there is something beyond us, because of my experiences with near-death experience and some others. Um, I know intimately what my truth is, and then I'll say that I always kind of, preface it by saying, "This is my truth today. This
Mhm,
is what I know so far today."
mhm,
Because hopefully I'm stretching and I'm growing and I'm evolving and maybe my truth will be a little different in
mhm,
the future. But um, I'm excited about the time that we're in because I think more and more people are saying, "Hey, there's just this urging. I just feel like there's something more than this."
mhm. Yeah, I would tend to agree. Like I would think that the increasing level of automation of our lives and the growth of artificial intelligence and the way computers are kind of taking over our whole lives, I think that is going to force a certain subsector of the population to really dig deep on what it means to be human. And I think like, it always frustrates me that like, obviously interplanetary expansion of the human race is, I think, important. But it's amazing how many billions of dollars are being spent on rocket thrusters and catching rockets that come back down to Earth so that you can reuse them, which is the most amazing technology I've ever seen in my life. But it would be nice if one of these like massive billionaires would just spend their billions trying to figure out what the hell's going on in here, which I feel like everyone's just passing over. Like we're spending, we're building automated taxis. We're going to send people back to the moon. We've got rockets that can land and be caught by like these little chopsticks, but no one's spending any money figuring out like what's going on here. And this is not a complete finished product yet. Like we have no idea what's going on in our body. And I'm one of these people who absolutely believes that we are only really accessing like 10% of our actual neural capacity and that, we're connected to each other and to nature in a very incredible way. And no one's really putting money behind trying to figure out what that is. And yet we have all these billionaires donating money to solving vaccine issues and healthcare problems and all these other things, but no one's really trying to figure out what's going on inside of us. And I think that's like the first question that we need to answer.
I think people are. I think there is money out there. I couldn't name it for you, but Greg Braden. I mean, I know that he's involved with heart math, and there are others that I've heard on other podcasts that people are exploring. It's just not hitting mainstream, and mainstream loves the material world. And those who have had experiences know that the material world is simulation.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely that, that matrix, theory, where we're all just kind of plugged in and sleeping in a pod and this is just life existing. There's elements of that, and it's funny. Like if you go back tens of thousands of years, you can find objects in ancient Egypt that were made to the manufacturing capacity or the manufacturing skill that we actually haven't even reached yet at this current stage of where we're living today. So it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of like things going on where people are trying to figure out like that our world is a lot older than it really is, and that actually there were probably very highly sophisticated civilizations that came before us. And I kind of believe more in that than kind of any organized religion of us being created or put here. I think the story is much more complicated than everyone wants to make it believed. I think everything's been really dumbed down so that we don't ask these questions, and that so we don't challenge our governments or challenge our religious leaders in a way that allows them to be secondary to some even greater power. I think that was kind of like implied thousands of years ago when they came out with like human created religion.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's all about control.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we all thought that we were as powerful as we are, all the control would be lost.
Yeah.
So,
Is what the president of France, if you live in Paris, and if what the president of France says is actually not the most important thing that's going on in France, and that there's a higher power that's otherworldly, that might have visited us before or something like that, does the president of France have a leg to stand on when they ask us to do something? No. So
right.
so it's all about kind of maintaining that the earthbound system and the authenticity in that system that's been created.
But I think there's so much programming that has been done over these years that it's hard for people to break through those patterns to get to the point where they're beyond the noise to be able to hear that inner wisdom.
Mhm.
And uh, but more and more people are seeking alternative ways to heal themselves. So
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I think the majority of the people on Earth, and there's more and more people like every year coming out, and there's now we got like 8 billion people, but the majority of the people on Earth are just here to, they're just not that, they're not really thinking about all these kinds of things for various reasons. They might have difficulty finding food, they might not have food security, they might not have shelter security, they might have job security, they might have children. They're not just thinking about what's really going on in our society. And there's still people, for example, in LA, you drive down the street, you go to the grocery store or whatever, and you still stop at a stoplight, look over to the left, and you still see people wearing COVID masks while driving their car by themselves in their own car. And you got to wonder, like, okay, interesting. People at the CDC just in the last 6 months have testified in front of Congress saying masks weren't really useful. And the 6 feet distancing was something we just thought of in the moment, and there was no scientific proof behind any of it. And yet there's people still wearing masks in their own cars when they're by themselves. Like, I can understand if you have an immune issue and you go to the supermarket or something like that, and you got to be careful because it's easy for you to catch germs. That makes sense. But if you're in your own car by yourself, that raises more questions than answers.
Well, of course. And what's the basis of that? It's fear,
Yeah.
right? So people live in fear. And until you can move people away from that or empower people away from fear, they're always going to look for somebody to protect them or save them.
Yeah. And our political leaders are not it. Bite the tongue. We won't get into that. But let's go way back. Let's take a second. We started off on a massive tangent. So, how did you get into this mindfulness near death experience kind of world? Because you've been in this for a while. You've helped a lot of people along the way. You've done a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. But if we could go like way back, where were you born and how did you get into this whole space?
Oh, wow, that is way back. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, East Coast of the United States, in a small town. Yep. Um, and my mom was always very holistic, right? More natural, holistic ways of health and wellness. So I was raised with, like apple cider vinegar and no sugar and that kind of thing. And of course, I didn't like that as a child, but as an adult, grateful for that foundation. And I was raised in a Catholic family. I would say Catholic light, right?
Mhm.
Christmas and Easter. And at that point, my mom had had a breakdown in faith. So it was basically we went to Catholic school, my two sisters and I, and we found our own way, right? But as a teenager, I started to see things that I wasn't that wasn't resonating with me, and I really couldn't put my hand or my finger on it. And so I started seeking. I started looking at other things, like the idea of just one God for a saved people just didn't feel right to me. And as I got older and explored other things, I started to develop my own understanding of what my spiritual connection was. I still believe in God. I have a connection with God. Um, the God that I connect to, I believe is the creator of all that is. Whatever all that is. I think it's beyond what our little planet is. Right. Um, I remember my mom once asking me who I prayed to, and I thought it was kind of a trick question because I was like, "God, who do you pray to?" Right? And she had kind of a litany of people that she prayed to, saints and things like that, because she didn't feel worthy enough to go direct. So that always stuck with me because I think sometimes we get stuck in um, this space in religion where we don't feel worthy enough. And that's where, I mean, she was devout until the day that she died, and she was petrified to die, and she died in she's 90.
Mhm.
Um,
That's that fear issue, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
so back to fear. And so then after that, I started exploring. I moved to LA when I was 30 and started understanding more about other religions and other philosophies, and leaned more into the metaphysical and the spiritual, and really just understanding more about mindset.
Did you, sorry to interrupt, did you want to make it your career at that
Oh,
stage, or were you just kind of searching on your own?
yeah, this was just all pure personal development. I found that even from a young person, I just was an explorer. I wanted to make known the unknown. I knew that there was something that was being hidden. I didn't know what that something was, but I just wanted to know. So I explored and continue to explore. Um, and so when I moved to LA, things really started to change. I was in commercial real estate consulting, and so certainly not in the health and wellness field. And then I moved to Las Vegas,
Yeah.
and I'd gotten married and moved to Las Vegas, and there was a kind of a great storm that
Yeah.
happened, right? So the storm that happened was that my husband was in a major car accident. My elderly mother had come to live with us, and then things just started to collapse in the financial world around the real estate market.
In
So
2008?
yeah, it was a perfect storm, right? So my then husband had gotten in this car accident in 2004. So we were dealing with 4 years at this point of just chronic pain, the the nightmare of a lawsuit, um, constantly needing volumes of writing out his disability, right? And we know now that the more that you affirm something, the more that it affects you physically. So he wasn't getting well. Um, and then trying to get pregnant at that time, and we did have a child in 2005, and so this perfect storm happened, and I was very ill, and I had leaned away from my holistic roots and started taking prescriptions for illnesses and things like that, which were then affecting me in a negative way. And I had gotten an upper respiratory infection, and my husband had wanted to go to a Vipassana meditation, so noble silence. And that's like 10 days of noble silence. And he was going off to a retreat. And I was like, go, 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 because he was really struggling himself. So we were all in this big story, individually struggling. And we had really gotten to a place where we weren't really liking each other very much, so we were struggling in the marriage as well. And so I ended up saying I'll go to a doctor and get a prescription for antibiotics because of this upper respiratory thing, because he wanted to make sure that I was okay when he left. And so I did that. We said our goodbyes. Would have no communication with the family. After that, they put their phones in a box or whatever. And then I went downhill fast. And without all the minute details of that, I was in bed and I felt my body starting to lift, excuse me, my spirit lift outside my body. And it is the most freeing thing you can imagine. Um, it had happened once before during a Reiki session. Are you familiar with Reiki?
No,
It's
no.
energy healing. It's an Japanese energy healing modality. It's done with touch or no touch, just hovering your hands and channeling through energy. And in that session, I felt my spirit lift outside my body, and it freaked me out a little bit, and then I kinda sucked it back in. And then I was like, "Oh, wow, this is amazing. Let me see if I can do it again." So I had that experience a couple years prior, and then or maybe a year prior, and then it was happening again, but this time I knew intimately that I could leave, that I was ready to, what people would say, die, but it didn't feel scary at all, but my conscious mind was saying, "Oh, my toddler was in the house. My elderly mother wouldn't know what to do. She'd have a heart attack. She had um, a challenged heart." And so I got myself together enough to be able to grab my phone and call my girlfriend who is my son's godmother, and she came to get him, and as soon as I knew that he was safe, I was in bed and my spirit left my body. Now I don't know how long, that process took, but I went from being on my deathbed, right, to feeling so free and in this space of the whitest of white. Um, it was an energy. I didn't have a body. I was a sphere. I was a sphere of energy. I was in energy. And it was just like Dr. Michael Beckwith, who is the minister, reverend of Agape here in Southern California. He's written a lot of books about spirituality, but he says that dying is like taking off a tight shoe. And that's exactly it. It's just this freedom of like, that you were finally the size that you're meant to be, this just, beautiful energy. And I was met by 2 light beings that I noticed coming from off in the distance and getting closer to me, which is weird because depth perception in this energy of white light was kind of strange. I had my personality. I could kind of almost hearing myself talk and, like, there was consciousness there.
Mhm.
So these 2 light beings started coming towards me, and there was, the one on the left was a little larger and more masculine in energy, the one on the right a little more slight, and, they were so bright that there were no features, but it was a human, outline, and they, communicated with me telepathically, and, they basically said that it was, not time to go, but it was my choice. I had free will to decide to continue on. I felt like I was in this between space, like I was getting ready to go on a train to wherever the other side is. And so I was ready to go, and I was like, okay, well, I'm ready. Let's go. And the communication went something like this. So I needed to go through a relationship review. I know a lot of near death experiencers have life reviews where they experience certain, lifetime events or they see it on a screen kind of. I didn't have any of that. It was just more of a visceral feeling, and they were just key people that would wash over me, and I would feel just this extraordinary love for them, and, um and only the wisdom and the knowledge that came from the experience. So no woulda, coulda, shoulda, not, "Oh, they did that to me," or even forgiveness, even something like, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that to them." There was none of that. It was just pure love, but love beyond what we really have capabilities of understanding here. And, um, and so I would have that experience and then it would slowly dissipate and then the next one would come and I'd have the same experience. And the ones that I remember are my ex-husband. And the why I think it was powerful is because we weren't in a good space, right? Like I had said, we really didn't like each other at that point, but there was only love. There was only love and the wisdom and the knowledge of the experience of us coming together. And then my son was left to last, and um, it always catches me because, it's a much purer, softer, beautiful love, with a child, and yet, even after I had that experience, I was so grateful for the wisdom and knowledge, for the experience of birthing this child and being his mother, but even afterwards, I was like, "Okay, I still wanna go."
Mhm.
So, there's no attachment, and people get kind of caught up in that, like, "Oh, why wouldn't she wanna go back for her child?" Well, it's like the love quotient goes so far beyond what we're capable of that there is no attachment. I guess it's the closest thing to unconditional love that we would know.
Mhm.
And so these light beings said, "Well, this being, my son, would not be able to fulfill his destiny if he lost his mom again." So apparently, in previous incarnations, he had lost his mom at an early age, and that he had something to do, and that it was important for him to do that. I didn't know what it was, still don't. And then, and so they said, "Well, we want you to feel the feeling of what this being would feel at the loss of his mother." And with that, I had kind of a wash of this energy that came through me, this deep, deep, deep grief. I describe it as shards of glass ripping through your soul. It's pretty intense pain, and then, of course, that did it because you wouldn't wish that on anyone, not even an enemy.
Mhm.
You had them, much less a child. So, with that was the decision to return back with a little bit of negotiation about what that would look like, and that is that I would come back and do work of the light, if you will, and some other kind of negotiations along the way, and then with that, I was back in my body, and Ryan, I sat up and I was like, "What the expletive just happened?" Because, um, I didn't know at the time. I was calling it a fantasy of death. I was almost completely better, and I'm sitting up, and the room was just glowing.
Mhm.
It had a vibration, it had a life to it that I couldn't explain, but everything was beautiful, even to the point of looking at a door with hinges and a doorknob was just beautiful.
Mhm.
And I sat there kind of in a stupor trying to figure what this was. And then I ended up calling my sister, who was studying metaphysics at the time, and she's a Leo, and she's usually very exuberant and, uh, forward facing. I would say, like, she jumps into a conversation, and yet she would just let me say everything that had happened, and she said, "Oh," afterwards, she said, "You had an exit opportunity," and so that was, like, my first check. "Oh, okay, so this is something that happened. I didn't just, it wasn't an illusion of some kind." So I got off the phone with her, called another friend who was a spiritual mentor, and she referred me to her spiritual mentor. And she got back to me right away and said, "Describe it." I described it. I said, "I just feel like this essence around me." And she said, "That residue will last about 2 weeks." She said, "Textbook near death experience." She had had multiple ones. And she said, "Write about it, journal it, because you'll spend the rest of your life trying to get back there." And it dissipated slowly over those 2 weeks,
Mhm.
and I was really grateful for the advice from everyone, from my sister to, my friend to this gal, uh, who was in, Houston, Texas, and because I wouldn't have known. And so that set me on a trajectory that where has led me to where I am today.
Wow. That's intense. I mean, did you so, you were kind of at rock bottom physically and emotionally, it sounds like, when you did have that kind of exit opportunity. You're on pharmaceuticals, you were sick, your relationship was not going great, and you seemed to have like a lot of challenges in your life. And then you had the exit opportunity and you came back and you were refreshed, and you had this kind of like reawakening almost. Is that enough to
It's
say?
definitely an appreciation
Mhm.
for especially my son. I mean, of course, I was a helicopter mom. My only child, loved him to bits, continue to do so. Um, but I had a new appreciation for his purpose.
Mm.
And, um, and so I came back with a new appreciation for life and for living. And it didn't mean that any of those challenges were different or went away. In fact, they continued. But the I I return back to that experience as the truest experience of my life. So whenever anything is happening, I always use that as the benchmark.
Wow. And did your body regress back to the stage where you were on pharmaceuticals and suffering and sick, or did you somehow just snap out of all of it?
So I brought my son home and had him again, my husband was still at that retreat and had him sleep in bed with me that night and just appreciated those moments with him. And the next morning, as the sun was starting to creep in and he was still asleep, I went into the bathroom to take a shower and I was brushing my teeth. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh, this is weird. And I could feel like the water running from my mouth. And I looked in the mirror and I saw that half my face was paralyzed. And I, prior to the near death experience, I would have freaked out. I would have gone right to, I'm having a stroke or whatever, right? Um, but I laughed and I thought, okay, so this is purposeful for me to, have this experience, to understand something, to know that I don't know, I wasn't dreaming or whatever. And so I got myself together and I got my son to his preschool and I went to the hospital and I walked in and I'm like, something's going on here. And they rushed me in thinking that I'm having a stroke. But Ryan, I knew I wasn't having a stroke. I just knew that that just wasn't in the cards. And so it ended up being Bell's palsy, and they gave me, they said, "You may or may not get your face back, may take about 6 months." And I was like, "No, that's not happening." And so, they had given me some antiviral or whatever to take, and I, scheduled Reiki, I scheduled acupuncture, and it was, like, more like 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You beat the estimates by a long shot.
There you go.
Yeah.
Power of intention.
So, I mean, where do you stand now reflecting on that experience? I guess it's been what, like 20 years since you've had that experience?
2008,
Okay.
right?
So 17-ish years. I mean, how often do you revisit that experience looking for some kind of purpose or greater understanding?
Less and less all the time because I've had extraordinary experiences. Prior, a couple prior, and then a lot after. So I've had experiences with a friend's spirit who was transitioning, and he came to me. I've had the experience of um, ayahuasca in Peru. I've had lots of intuitive experiences and communications. Um, so to me, they've just reinforced what I already know, which is this is just a vessel,
Hmm.
and we're here for purpose. Each one of us has our own purpose, and mine, I've come to understand, is to help ease suffering in emotional and spiritual ways.
Wow. That's a lot to take on. or is it not?
Um, I can't say it's been easy.
Because not a lot of other people have had that experience that you've had. So sharing that with people, I mean, you must get a huge variety of responses.
Well, what's interesting, a couple key points is there are a lot of people that have had near-death experiences, and many have had them, but were just too timid to come out and speak about them. You don't want to be ridiculed, right?
Mhm.
Um, but why I knew it was so powerful for me is prior to it, I cared a lot about what people thought, and very insecure, and on the shy side. And then when my husband came back and knew something had happened, he called right away and he said, "What's going on?" I couldn't meditate. I knew something was going on there. And see, there's that connection, right? A connection that is beyond the physical. And I said, "Well, why don't you just come home and I'll tell you?" And he's like, "No, no, no, I need to know." And I'm like, "I'm okay. Our son's okay. Everybody's okay. Just come home. I'll tell you." So when I explained everything in great detail, um, he was kind of just sitting there. And we were not too far than what we are right now. And I could, inside, I knew he didn't believe me.
Mhm.
I could the hear his voice, hear the essence of what he was thinking and feeling. And that was new. And so there were things that came with that experience, the heightened senses. But the biggest thing is I said, "You don't believe me." And he took a beat and said, "Oh, it's not that I don't believe you. I believe that you think you had this experience." And
No.
I said, "That's okay. It doesn't matter if you believe me because this has been the most profound experience of my life. And it doesn't matter if anybody believes me. It's my intimate experience. It's my connection to my source." So that was one of the biggest changes. Is that when you have an experience like this, you don't feel the necessity to explain it to anyone or to explain why you believe it when you have these types of experiences.
That's a nice change.
Yeah. It was. Now, it doesn't mean, my life has never been easy. I'll just say, I've always had challenges. Um, But I also find in my experience because I've been blessed to experience a lot of different people through the work that I do, and then I had a wellness center, so I knew a lot of, um, practitioners, people that were either in spiritual development or, those who were, practitioners themselves, and, everyone has something that they're dealing with, right? And it just reinforced that this is a time of learning. So, what are we here to learn? Um, and I've come to find out that in the contrast is the only time we learn. So, when we don't have contrast, which is anything that is not loving and kind and beautiful, right? Anything that is painful,
Mhm.
then those are the times that we get to dig in and understand that they are our greatest teacher.
Mhm. It's, uh, that's a big journey. That's a lot of, like, responsibility for you to carry, I guess, because 'cause you've had that experience. It kind of, like, opened up a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of living, a whole new way of communicating with people. I mean, did you really feel like that kind of changed the trajectory of your whole life?
It 100% did change, yeah. And I can't say that time of not caring what other people think, right? About like I said with my husband, that that didn't stay. Um, and I've ebbed and flowed through, do I really need to continue to do this work? Because it's challenging at times. Um, and anytime I've tried to pull away from it, it's like whatever the Godhead, the universe, spirit is like, yeah, go ahead. Good luck with that. And I always get pulled back into it, and at a different level.
Yeah. Do you think I mean, do you th in people that you've associated with or communicated with since that kind of exit opportunity, that kind of soul, out of body experience that you had when you were kind of on your deathbed, have you been able to talk to other people who have had similar experiences, but maybe not on their deathbed? Like, is this something that has to happen to you when you're at the lowest of the low?
No. I have for a long time, I didn't want to talk to anybody that had had one because I just felt it was such an intimate experience. I didn't want it was pure to me, and I didn't want to get more information from someone else so that it changed the way that I thought about my experience. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I just didn't want more data around it. And at that time, I had written my first book, which, you know, uh, it was a labor of love. It was, 4 years in the making, and it was really just to get the experience on paper, and I found that for a while, even after, there weren't a whole lot of books out there about near-death experiences, but there was a turning point, and I can't pinpoint the year, but there was a turning point where more and more just started coming out, and now, I mean, YouTube is full of near-death experience, podcasts, interviews, channels
Mhm.
that talk about just near-death experiences, and, there are a lot of people who have had them, and they're always life-changing. Your perspective about things always change, and particularly like the ones who are, atheists or scientists who have had the experiences and then have the vocabulary to come back and explain it, whereas I can't explain what's going on in the brain. I always kinda joke, I'm like, "I'm of average intelligence, and so, maybe belief is easier for me."
Mhm.
Um, but that's I'll go to my dying this experience, deathbed, and know that is my truth.
Yeah. Well, what do you, I mean, like, what do you think these people that you communicated with were trying to tell you? Like, like, they said you had a choice, right? They said you had a choice. You could either come with them and check out of this meat suit that we're all kind of in, or you could go back down and what, like, try to live a different life, try to communicate people about the experience you've had, try to educate people. Like, did they kind of guide you in that direction?
The first guidance that I had was to open up a wellness center, and I did that in Las Vegas, and I didn't have 2 cents to rub together to do that, and by this point, I'm hearing guidance.
Mhm.
So, that's a little weird, right? And I always joked about, I was a skeptic and I was from the show me state, even though I wasn't from the show me state. But always a little bit skeptical. I
How did
believe
that guidance come to you? Sorry to interrupt. Like,
that's all right.
I mean, were you sleeping and did you see it in dreams, or were you just meditating or exercising or out for a walk and just have these like
They drop in. It's like you might have a stream of a thought, right? A, B, C, D, this is your stream of thought. But when it comes in intuitively, it's just a thought that drops in. And for me, it drops into like this part of my consciousness. And it's weird that I've learned to kind of figure that out. Like you end up having your own language of your extra senses and how they work for you and what your system is. And so information would just drop in and to the point of turn right, turn left, go in here, ask this, right? And at first it's, you think you're going crazy, right? And until the evidence of what unfolds is so miraculous as it happens that you just cannot deny that this is something beyond you
Mm,
and beyond the physical. But there was also a period of time where I said, "I've had enough of this. I'm shutting all that down.
mhm.
I don't wanna carry that burden. I don't wanna know what other people are thinking. I don't want intuitive guidance." And so in that process, I got guided in a different area, which was mindfulness,
Mhm.
right? And so my life has changed in different trajectories, but still under the umbrella of wellness and wholeness. Right.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, have you tried to, I mean, I guess if you have an experience like that, I mean, for me, just thinking out loud, like if I had an experience like that that was so pure and so whole to what to who I am or what I was thinking, like I would try to replicate that in any way possible. Like, have you gone down that path of trying to find ways back into that space?
I'm going to go back and answer your original question. Sorry, I went off on a tangent,
No.
which was, can you have the experience without dying?
Yeah.
And yes. So out of body experiences, people have been seeking out of body experiences and have had them in all kinds of different ways. But I sought that through ayahuasca.
Okay.
And so it took a while. And it was I had had the wellness center. We were growing like crazy, and the beautiful people that showed up. I mean, this center was run on volunteers and people that just saw the vision and wanted to be in it. And it was extraordinary. It was an extraordinary time. And so started with 2 rooms in an executive suite in 2008. It grew. We kept just taking a room and a room, ended up being 13 rooms and an executive suite until I got the information drop in that we needed to be larger and it needed to be that particular size by 11, 11, 11. And, I'm like, "I don't know how we're gonna do that," right? So, I'll get information, but then I try to use my thinking mind to figure things out,
Mhm.
and, it took me a really long time, and I still do it, to just let go and allow for things to unfold and stop chasing them or trying to create them when it's kind of predestined, right? But we ended up and it was at the last hour, and miracles, true miracles happened during that transition from those 13 rooms to the large space of 6,000 square feet. And, we had an opening party that was, from 11:11 AM to 11:11 PM, and we just had an extraordinary, experience there. Um, so that was during 2000 wait a minute, when did I say? 11:11. And then, in 2000, probably towards the fall, I was already starting to think that there's gotta be some way for me to get back to have that experience because it was fading and I was stressed and I was so, entrenched in the business of running, the center that I was really losing my connection in some ways. Now, when I was working with people, because I was doing Reiki and sessions and things like that, I had extraordinary experiences, out of body experiences. I saw light beings. One time I was working on someone and everything in the room went away.
Mm.
It was just white and rows and rows and rows of beings with robes. That's all I saw. By the way, I don't do any drugs, and I didn't. So it was extraordinary and lots of those kinds of experiences. But for my own personal development, I started to kind of get this urging, this itch about ayahuasca. Lots of people were experiencing it, were going out of the country to do it. And I had never experienced those kinds of hallucinogenic drugs or anything like that. And so I was very much a novice in this realm, and it was not and you have to understand when you're dealing with plant medicine, it has nothing to do with, it being social or, a fun experience. It's based in work and healing.
Mhm. And it's very inward looking, I've heard.
Oh, it's deep.
Mhm.
And so, I work with a shaman, who was already a part of our center, and she worked with me for months prior to prepare for it because it's such deep work. And I went to an extraordinary place in Peru. I'm gonna give them a little shout out. It's called the Temple of the Way of the Light. Extraordinary,
Mhm.
massive in the Amazon. Um My experience wasn't extraordinary. It was traumatic. But, I went with a friend who was part of the center, and, luckily, because, I shouldn't have gone by myself, and he was a photographer is a photographer, and so it was great to have somebody kind of document the experience, and, um, but, going on it was like a National Geographic documentary, we were in canoes and getting into, the area where this retreat center. I mean, it doesn't do it justice by calling it a retreat center. It's massive. Like they grow food um and so do you want me to tell that story?
I would love to hear it because I think, there's a lot of people out there that are interested in ayahuasca or any psilocybin or these kinds of medicinal treatments. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are suffering from addiction or depression or just dealing with things that they can't seem to get through. I think more and more people are turning towards that as an alternative to pharmaceuticals, and to talking therapy or human based kind of human to human therapy, um, like um, like psychiatrists. So I think a lot of people are kind of very interested in that, and I would love to hear the full story.
Yeah, they do amazing work, and so when I prepared, lost a lot of weight because you're on a special diet,
Mhm.
and, it's preparing you to live in the jungle because you're living in these little huts, right? And there's no running water, no flushing toilet or anything. And so I think it was in the springtime. It was hot there. And and so I prepared ahead of time, and I really thought that I was prepared. I was like, "I've got this. It's great." Shaved my head because I didn't want to deal with any of that, right? You're living in a hut. And and so we went, and very excited about the whole experience, and there were some rituals, some processes that you went through. You met with the shamans there, and they intuitively would read you and tell you what you needed to work on and then give you herbs to start taking, and then you go through this. I can't even remember the word for it, but, it's a fancy word for vomiting,
Mhm.
and, you go through this purge process, and, I'm just one of those people that I will do anything to not throw up.
Okay.
If I am deathly ill, I will do anything because it's just, you know,
Mm.
don't wanna do that, and and so that was, like, a little unnerving, but I knew ahead of time that that was the process, but then you do it in front of everyone, so there's this line of people, and oh, let me back up. So the shaman told me that and there's an interpreter, right? So this is what I also love about this particular retreat house is that they have like a doctor or a naturopath there, and they have people that are facilitators that are English speaking, and I felt completely safe, completely protected in this environment of the unknown. And if I would ever choose to do it again, I would go back there.
Mhm.
So here's the line, and I'm kind of in the back of the line, and, originally so I'm sorry, I keep going back and forth. Originally, when they're reading you, the shaman said that my issue is fear,
Mhm.
and I was like, "No, my issue isn't fear." I jump in, right? Like, spirit tells me to do something, I do it. I'm a warrior,
Mhm.
right? So they saw way beyond the facade of what I thought, right? And so then the vomit line we go through, and the purging is not just to get rid of the toxins, but it is a freeing up of the system. And so it took a while, and it took the shamans for a while to work on me to the point where I was the only one left, even there were people behind me, and they worked on me, and that was done. And we go back and, we have soup or broth or whatever, and then that evening, you go and have your first, I forgot what they call it, um, experience, it'll come to me. Anyway, so you go into this large hut, and you have a flashlight on your head that goes red and just the regular white light. And everyone is sitting in a circle, and it's a very big circular or octagon uh, hut. I know it's a better name for that in the jungle, and we're basically going to stay there all night. And there's drumming and there's the music and the chanting and things going on, and everyone has a chair, like one of those molded summer chairs that are cheap you can get at any Walmart or whatever, but the legs are cut off,
Mhm.
so you can sit, and then everybody has a bucket because there's vomiting involved, and then and you walk up these plank stairs. It's like a treehouse,
Mhm.
huge treehouse.
Like a sweat lodge almost.
I've never been in a sweat lodge, but, uh, this was open. There was some opening, that you could I mean, it was screened, um, but, big enough for about 21, participants, and then all the shamans and people, that were the practitioners
Mm.
always there helping. And so they had said that, if you feel in trouble or if you feel that you need to go to the bathroom, which is an outdoor, potty, to flash your light. Okay, so we've got it all down and I'm feeling good. My friend is across the way and we have our mats and we're all set up and ready. And they start with a ceremonial tobacco, and I don't smoke, but I'm like, "I'm jumping in. I'm gonna do that, right?" So I smoke this, tobacco, and I'm like, "It's not for me," but anyway, did that, and then, they took groups of 7, to come up and then have the ayahuasca, drink the ayahuasca, which is like this deep red sludge of a concoction, and, I can even smell it to this day. It was so, traumatic for me that that I will always know that smell. And so the 7 come, and okay, we're sitting and I'm watching and the lights and the flickering of the lights and then I see more 7, the next 7, and then all of a sudden, it was like a train.
Oh.
This just flooding of this energy and of the psychedelic lights, right? They're very specific um, movement of the visual that you have and the color. It's like I know in the 70s we had these posters with black lights and it just kind of looked like that, and it scared me a lot. And flashed my light immediately. I was in major panic. And the person came to me, but I'm like, I am not in my body. I'm not in my right mind. I'm like, right, I have no idea what's going on. Now, the really super weird part of this is for the months prior while I was working with this shaman, as I kept having a recurring dream.
Mhm.
And the recurring dream was that I was in a treehouse and that I couldn't see, and someone was guiding me up and down and around this treehouse, all the way around, down the stairs and around the bend, and constant and constant and constant, recurring, recurring, and then it happened.
Mm.
And so this, practitioner came and got me and, took me to the bathroom, and I was hallucinating like crazy. I was seeing major like, these big bugs, and it was terrible.
Sounds like a terrible
It was terrible. I had never had the experience, so I had never had, any previous experience, and so fear was just, like, in high, high volume.
Mhm.
And I don't know how long I was in that cubicle, but to the point where the doctor that was, from Texas, he was so kind. He was like, "Come on, Lee, we gotta go. We gotta get you to work on, the shamans need to work on you. We gotta go. We gotta go. We gotta go on." So I think it took a while for him to coax me out of there and then back up to my area and to allow the shamans to work on me. And at that point, then a lot of the stuff that was just really intense started to subside. And I just started feeling these waves run through my body. And it was like running through my body like I was being scanned over and over and over again. And then I heard Mother Ayahuasca. So people call her Mother, people call her Mother Earth, people call her Mother Ayahuasca, but there's a very distinct voice of Mother Ayahuasca. And she said, I said I was scared because I thought I would never see my son again. And she assured me that I was going to be going back and that I would see my son. And then she said, these particular traits from your mom. And she detailed out these traits. She said, that's what we're removing from you now. And we're letting them do their work.
Mhm.
And then I can remember like it was yesterday in this tiny little girl's voice, are you done yet? And then I was like, "It's okay if you don't get it all. I just, like, wanna be done."
Mhm.
And, and then I woke up, and I was one of the last people up, and then you just, looked around. It was daytime or morning, and it was light, and you clean up your area, and you clean up your bucket, and then I started to walk back to my hut where I was, where I was sleeping, and bawled my eyes out all the way there, and, it was just super traumatic for me, and then I went and visited my friend, and he had had all those previous experiences, so we came at it from very different, previous experiences, and, he also had a rough time, and so what we learned after is that it was a very potent dose,
Mhm.
and that that's not something that you can, um, regulate,
Mhm.
and that everybody seemed to have had a really rough time, that it was just it happened to be that, and I'm a lightweight anyway,
Mhm.
so it just affected me in a negative way, and I had said to him, "I can't do it again. I can't go back." And now this was supposed to be a 2-week thing where you were doing 6 ceremonies.
Oh,
That's
wow.
the word ceremony. And,
6.
yeah, and, Ryan, I was just there was just no way. I was just yeah, wasn't happening. So
Do you think 'cause you I it sounds like you went down to Peru and did the ayahuasca to try to get back to where you were when you were on your deathbed. Do you think there might have been, like, some punishment for trying to replicate that
oh,
experience for,
great question.
for something that's plant-based and ayahuasca-based? Like, maybe what happened to you was so pure and so unique and so that it's impossible to replicate. And the fact that you even tried meant that you maybe had a bad trip. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like,
Yeah, it's a great question.
yeah,
I don't believe in punishment like that.
yeah,
But the lesson was that I don't need that
mm,
to get back. Um, and so I think my intention around it was wrong.
mhm,
If my intention would have been to heal my trauma, I think might have gone differently.
mhm,
They really didn't want me to leave, and my friend wanted to leave as well, and that could be just because he was supporting my journey, but, um, did I do myself a disservice for not staying? Maybe,
mhm,
because maybe I would have broken through those fears, and I would have been able to work more fully with the shaman to get through it, but that fear, that trauma, just I was out.
yeah,
And, but it was an amazing place. I mean, you could hear monkeys in the trees, and, uh, it was, uh, it was beautiful scenery,
mhm,
amazing to be there. I mean, you've been in places like that, but I had never.
mhm,
I was more like, the 4 and 5-star hotels was more my speed, um, this was extraordinary. And then we ended up, exploring Peru, which was also had its benefits, and it was fantastic, but, when I came back, it took me a while, and, had experiences post that I had to deal with, and that's just a whole 'nother avenue, but, uh, you open up a door and you better have the tools to know how to deal with that
Mhm.
because not everything is love and light.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of darkness in all of
There's
us.
a lot of, well, not only in us, but out there.
Mhm.
And you break through a portal, a tear, you get through, and you allow and you open yourself up for what I call jumpers. So experiences of dark energy. And I used to not believe in all of that until I've had experiences that made me believe.
Mhm. I mean, where how do you feel like I mean, how do you explain the fact that you're sensitive enough to feel and understand these different dimensions, I suppose? Like, because like I've actually had a physicist on the podcast many maybe like a year ago, and we were talking about like after death experiences and what happens to the soul and stuff like that, and she came at it from a really scientific perspective, and it was nice to hear that, and again, people having the vocabulary to talk about these things without using like man-made religion, for example, and 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 she basically kind of set it out by saying like we live in a multi-dimensional world, but our eyes we can only see in three dimensions, but there's other stuff existing all around us that we don't have access to, and and then it's like, well, do some animals or insects have access to more than three dimensions, or are animals and insects around us more sensitive to things? And our senses have been so dulled because of the society or the way we live, that we're no longer attuned to those, our receptors are no longer sharp to those things going on because we've dulled our senses over the decades or centuries. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, how you justify this idea that somehow you're sensitive enough to connect to that.
Oh, I think we all are.
But then we'd all we then like the idea is like we're all capable of doing it, but maybe we're all not connecting to it or sensitive enough to it to recognize it.
I think we are all capable of it. I think we've been dumbed down in many ways,
Yeah, that's also true.
and it's purposeful.
Mhm.
So the way that we live, in the cities that we live, in the technology, in um, uh, media, uh, it's I mean, even movies and television, and just I mean, even in our lifetime, think about how fast things are going now, how much content is coming at us every single moment of the day. That's a lot of noise. That's a lot of interference.
The great distraction.
Yeah, it is. And so we all are capable of these experiences
Mhm.
and more.
Yeah.
Um, I I would like to have more, but sometimes I have to make a living, right? So sometimes I have to focus on other people and helping them on their path instead of me going off on a 2-week retreat, right? So these are, I think these are just questions that we have to ask ourselves. Like, what is it worth to you to connect to that part of you that is not the meat suit?
Mhm.
And so when I was in a space of knowing that I was going to this next level of whatever my mission, kind
Mhm.
of like that word, mission impossible, right? The mission is, um, I knew that it was going to encompass a broader understanding or a broader audience, and that was getting people to be less stressed.
Mm.
Because if you have all this noise and all this static and you're super, super stressed, the last thing that you are going to do is start thinking about your inner world,
Mm.
right? I mean, yeah, you might say, oh, okay, well, now I'm ill because of all this stress. So now I have to go do something. So maybe I'll start, exercising or getting out in sun or meditating or something like that.
or drinking.
Well, that's what a lot of people do, right? They find their way out, however that's going to be. Um, so I'm not even sure where I was going with that.
Yeah, I think it's, just again, you like the dumbing down the distraction of our everyday life, and it's kind of forcing us not to connect the way we should be. Like I feel that all the time. Like so when I was really making a lot of TV back in the day, I would go out for 2 weeks, and we do these, like 150, 200-mile walks in the mountains or across a desert or something like that. And you'd be offline for 2 weeks. And it was fucking amazing to be disconnected. You're totally absorbing every moment in this natural environment. There's no kind of man-made things around you. You're sleeping in a tent, you're eating food and stuff like that. But it was just wholly peaceful to be completely disconnected from that, and I never felt healthier or stronger or more purposeful in my entire life. And then it's funny, and then kind of COVID hits, and you can't travel, or maybe, if I had tried, maybe I could have spent more time in nature, but like, you're stuck indoors, you're stuck.
Isolation.
Yeah, and you're stuck being distracted by all the shit that you were trying to avoid for so many years. And I feel like now people are trying to get out of that space again and try to find ways of like reconnecting. And I think, ayahuasca is maybe one way. Meditation, breathing work can lead to various kinds of experiences. But for me, it's just being outside and away from people. And that's
And
where,
looking up in the sky.
yeah,
I mean, seeing stars.
yeah. Not in this town.
Well, right. Right.
I, yeah.
Right. I have a friend in Missouri, and he does this photography with, I forget what it's called. Um, but he has a very high power telescope, and he takes this photography from it, and they're extraordinary. And you feel very small, right? And I think I believe in the pathway to our spirituality is self-love and self-care, but not to the point of that it's all about you, but we have to start here so that we heal ourselves so that we can then emanate that energy out.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I also feel like everything in society is rigged against us to make that to make that not a reality.
Explain.
Well, I just feel like every single thing that is built into our society is getting us not to look inwards, but to look outwards.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
and I just and the amount of people who are walking around in a daze in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, who are just being bombarded by distraction on a daily basis, and who have never kind of stopped at any one moment in their life and figured out who they are or what they want, is shocking. Because like when I would do these 200 mile walks in the desert, with my crew, and we'd have a camel caravan and we have a guide and stuff like that. But for 10 hours a day, you're just kind of walking by yourself. It's very meditative. You're connected to the earth. You're connected to your surroundings. You're not really talking to people. You're in your own head. You're in your own space. And it was spectacular. You had the chance to reflect on life, reflect on who you were, reflect on what you wanted. And I would have the most amazing ideas about like what I wanted to do next, or places I wanted to visit, or ways of storytelling that I could do something differently. And it was just this euphoria of positivity and great ideas. And then as I stopped doing that, or as that slowed down, you could feel more negativity creeping in. You could feel more distraction creeping in. You could feel just society starting to suppress everything that was pure about those experiences, because you weren't having them as regularly. And it became like a drug to get outside and to do things and to spend weeks on end kind of away from people, just connected to nature, reflecting on who you are. And I feel like everyone needs that, but
Well,
no one gets it.
that's our natural state of being, and that's why you feel
Yeah.
the euphoria.
Yeah.
And that's why you get the great ideas, because that is your connection to fill in the blank, right? That is your divinity,
Yeah.
right?
A chance to look inward.
Yeah. And when you get rid of the noise, that's when solutions come.
Mhm.
And they do just come to you, right? You're saying you just got all these really great ideas. Well, that's part of that process of being connected that it just drops in.
Mhm.
And yes, it's all stacked against us, but I still have hope, and I still believe that enough of us uh, are doing the inner work and being in nature and understanding the value of our humanness to make a shift and to make a difference.
Do you think you were tapped for a reason? Do you think you had that kind of, um do you feel like you had that out of body experience and that opportunity to exit life? Like, do you feel like you had that because someone or something out there wanted to tap you to deliver a message
Right.
or to try to open more people up to these kinds of ideas or experiences and not just kind of because I'm like because like the worst thing that could happen is you have that experience and then you don't tell anyone
Right.
and then you just keep it for yourself. And it's like, well, why'd that happen to you if you're not sharing it, right? Or why you like? Because obviously, there's some power out there that wants us to connect in a way that you were connected, and in
Yeah.
a way that you're trying to teach people to connect. Like it's like that's our that should be our like base level. Like that should be where we're all trying to get to, and then everything that we've built around us is suppressing that. But it's almost like when I listen to your story, it's almost like that happened to you because something or someone wanted you to try to teach people how to connect in a more meaningful way.
Well, I think that that's the work that I'm meant to do, but I think a lot of people have gotten that message to do it, and some people pick up the baton and go, and some people don't. You know, I joke with my friends who do similar work, healing work. It's not for the faint of heart. It is, being a spiritual warrior is not for the faint of heart.
Mm.
We do it in soft ways, but it doesn't make it easy. And I think more and more, it's it's not just necessary; it's imperative that we do this now because our time is running out to be able to save us as as humans. Now, this is the Gregg Braden bit, which is I was so happy to happen upon it because it's really where my guidance has been leading me to really start. I had this experience with ChatGPT and I was like, oh, okay, so this happened for a reason because I always believe that something is that's contrast is happening for me to understand it so that I can teach on it.
Mhm.
And then the confirmation was the Greg Braden podcast, and so I think it's imperative. Things are moving so quickly now, and AI is learning so fast that, and we can't change the world, we can change us.
Mhm.
So if you're responsible for you and I'm responsible for me and whatever we're meant to do and you're podcasting, you get guests on that might spark the interest of this type of content for somebody, then that's what we can do. But our own personal inner work is the most important thing that we can do. Um, Keeping joy, claiming our sovereignty, and staying healthy during this challenging time.
And I think also too, like trying to just live more purposefully and trying to really understand what it means to be human. Because I feel like, again, this, Greg Braden brought this up in his podcast. He was on the Joe Rogan show like
Right.
last week or 2 weeks ago, maybe. And I was listening to it in the car, and it was just like he just nailed it. He's just like, we've given up trying to understand what is so i- beautiful about being human. And it's just like we're totally pushing forward with AI and pushing forward with all this automation and computers and everything like that. And we're even getting to the point where we're putting computers into ourselves to enhance ourselves without even fully understanding who we are and what we're capable of. And he was saying too, like that window of curiosity and exploration about trying to figure out what makes us so special as humans is closing with every funding round of OpenAI or whatever like that, because they're just getting, that's just drowning out the whole picture. There's no one fighting for humans anymore. And not to bash technology or something like that, but obviously we have to live in some kind of symbiosis where we can both kind of exist together. But at no point should we stop trying to figure out what's going on here, because we're we're you know x to the 10,000th more complicated than we think we are, and we haven't figured anything out yet.
Oh, we're like children.
Yeah.
And we haven't tapped into our human potential at all.
Mm.
But again, by design,
Yeah.
right? So we've been kept small. And I just loved that interview as well. And I think part of it with using so much AI, and the tools are great, but my experience was, oh, I gave my power to that. So now, and I felt the difference. I mean, I am highly empathic. I can understand what's going on inside my body, and I found that I was getting ill. I couldn't focus. My creativity plummeted,
Hmm.
and now I'm very purposeful.
Hmm.
I've claimed my sovereignty. I went through this process of kind of clearing myself from it, not giving it power over me, and I felt better. And so I started doing every morning before I even open it, because I tapped in to see, can I use it as a tool? Can I still use it, or should I just shut this down? No, you can use it as a tool, but you crack that window and it's going to take it. Just like, these apps, you give a permission, and before you know it, you've given wild permissions across many platforms, and you don't even realize you're doing it.
Hmm.
And so we have to become more empowered and purposeful and intentional, and continue to claim your sovereignty. Be empowered. You are the driver. You're the boss.
Hmm.
Use the tool.
But we're all really lazy. I feel like it's an uphill battle.
Well, but again, you can use the tool.
Hmm.
Just do it from a different perspective, and that's mindfulness.
Hmm.
So when you start becoming very um, clear and aware about your language and your perspective, you can come to the same outcome. Like, let's just say, I can still use ChatGPT. I can either give away my freedoms and just allow it to run amok and write everything for me, or I can use it as a tool, and it's an energy. I mean, you always feel it. Like my shoulders go back when my perspective is different. So, and this is important for everything that we do, that you're always tapping into your inner knowing of what is optimal, what is right for you, what is optimal.
Hmm.
I like optimal and less than optimal versus good and bad or something like that. But like there were things that happened during COVID, like this 6 foot distancing thing that irked me to no end, because I knew intimately, I knew in every cell of my being that that was a crock of, you know what?
Shit, you could,
Yeah.
yeah, you could swear. Stop bumper.
Yes. I just knew it, and it annoyed me that it was just like everyone was just following it so blindly.
Hmm. And even shitting on people who try to not
Y-
believe in it. Yeah. And then you've got kids not in school, they're not socializing. You got people at home depressed, trying to raise kids, work on Zoom. Like it was just such a nightmare of an experience. But it was very telling, because it was almost like it was orchestrated by some higher power, just to see, like, okay,
It's an experiment.
yeah, like we got 8 billion people on this little planet. Like how many of them are total sheep?
Mhm.
How many of them are going to keep wearing their masks in the car when they drive by themselves 5 years afterwards, right? Like, as a free thinking people, we did not prove ourselves strong or worthy during that time.
No,
We,
we
we,
failed.
I think in a lot of ways, and it's really troubling, because I really feel like society took a huge step backwards. I mean, obviously the technological advancements during that time were quite spectacular, because we all had to figure out how to communicate and make a living remotely. So, okay, great. Some companies made lots of money, but as human beings, I really feel like we regressed in a massive way between 2020 and 2023.
Trauma,
Yeah.
trauma, and then the younger ones,
Oh.
they got the brunt of it, but that's exactly, again, part of the, um the programming of them. So now, technology, because what did they do? The parents, and I did it too. My son was in front of video games,
Mhm,
right? So that's what they know.
mhm,
They know technology. So unless there is some sort of concerted effort to work with these kids, which, I've had the joy of working a couple of times speaking at the company that my son works for, and there are all these really great young men in their late teens and early 20s, and they're all about mindset, and they're getting it. And so there are pockets of kids that are breaking free from this and understanding the humanity,
mhm.
but I think for the most part, for, the majority, we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Have you continued trying to reconnect with that place that you were when you had your first experience? Like, is that still something you're trying to get back to? I mean, have you? No.
No, I feel like there is a a spiritual maturity that has come,
Mhm,
and and that, a lot of the years prior have been still in a space of grasping and wanting, and and I don't have that anymore. I mean, um, it just feels like I'm very focused on the present
mhm.
and what this is, and not trying to waste my time on trying to get somewhere that I'll eventually get to anyway.
What do you? I mean, what do you think that experience you had when you had that out of body experience? Like, what do you think that the biggest takeaway from that was for you?
Oh, that there's no death, that there's only life.
Can you imagine, by the way, just to interrupt you right off of that, can you imagine if you took away from our 8 billion people on this planet, can you imagine the power that you would unleash in human potential if you took away 8 billion souls and their fear of death?
Yeah,
Can you imagine what
yeah,
that would unleash into the world if we were no longer afraid of dying?
yeah. Heaven on earth. That's what I believe that we can get. We can get to it.
Mhm.
I would love to see it in my lifetime, but it's
Yeah.
hard on but so no death
Mhm.
and only love and no attachment.
Walk me through the no attachment bit. Is that no attachment to other human beings or material things or just anything? Like, are you just, a soul flowing through the universe, bouncing from place to place without any attachment, or are you not attaching to things in a purposeful way?
So that non-attachment is what I felt on the other side.
Mhm.
As a human, we attach, we have condition, right? And I've been practicing, and we're all a work in progress. Just because you have a near death experience doesn't mean like you know everything and things are better. Far from it. So I'm constantly working on myself to be a better human, have a better human experience. And so the non-attachment part is, like mindfulness. I'm going to go backwards a little bit. Mindfulness equals awareness and non-judgment. So who do we judge the most?
Ourselves.
Of course, everybody gets that. And so we must start with ourselves to really heal our inner wounds and our past traumas and really love ourselves before we can go out in the world. Like those people that are such big judgers, I've now started to understand it's because they don't like themselves very much. They're judging themselves. So we have to lean into compassion for that, even though it's challenging, right? So the attachment is in things like that. So I'm not attaching to what someone says to me. I'm not making it about me. It's always about that other person, right? If someone's nasty, and let me tell you, you're on a podcast and people always have something to say.
Yeah.
And it's human nature to look at the ones that aren't so nice and hold that versus the tons or, of ones that are positive. But, it's a work in progress of non-attachment to that because it really isn't about me, it's about them.
Mhm.
And then even with our relationships. So if you love someone, what is that saying? If you love someone, set them free, right?
Mm,
Um, and I've always loved with attachment, and that's conditional.
mm,
But no longer when you are spiritually mature, you love differently. Now, the downside to that is that you don't have the high highs and the low lows, the dopamine hits, right? Falling in love and all of that wonderfulness that comes with um, new relationships. And I'm sure there is still some of that, um, but you're like, if this is the scale, you're hovering more up here and you're kind of bebopping in the equanimous state, more in the even state.
mhm.
Doesn't mean that nothing will ever happen that would tweak you, because that wouldn't be living on the planet, right? Things happen, but you deal with them differently.
Mhm.
So you just don't get the high high and the low low.
I've if you don't mind, I'll just jump in. I've had a real issue actually in the last 2 decades of my life where I feel like I was living in a totally different realm than kind of everyone else emotionally, and where the point where it's like it just seemed like everyone around me was trying to suck me in to jump onto their emotional roller coaster, and I would just be a passenger in all of their bullshit. Where I was just kind of hovering in this like space where I care deeply about people, but I just can't let it necessarily affect me. And then people say that you're really cold or you're really, you don't care about people or you don't have love in your heart and all this stuff. And it's like, no, I have this in leaps and bounds, but I just don't get dragged up and down into these massive, caverns of darkness and massive emotional highs because, you get down too low, then you rebound too high. You get up too high, you go too low. But I'm in this like I've always been in kind of this nice kind of static, realm where I'm not fluctuating too much. And it's amazing how negative people around you get.
Oh yeah, they don't like it.
Not at all.
No.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, when it first happened, like when with like someone passing that I loved deeply, I cried, but then it was like I couldn't go deep. I couldn't like go into despair.
But because it's not despair.
Well, right. Part of it was like I felt a little guilty. Like if if I don't do that, then, did I not love them enough or something like that? And of course you work through that and you realize, no, that's hoo-ha because it's again that level of spiritual maturity. So you came in like that. I had to earn it.
Mhm.
I had to work through it. I had to do the work to get to that space that you came into this experience with.
Yeah, I mean, I think my time in nature helped condition me to that because I really feel like around 2005-ish, I started really going out for long walks, like 2, 3 weeks at a time where I would go out, live in a tent.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and it just calmed me to the point where everyone around me was unnerved by it and thought that I was some kind of cold human being that didn't feel, but actually I was way more connected to everything than I'd ever been, but I just wouldn't succumb to the garbage that people who look out into society and want to reflect what they see in society and then they feel what everyone else is feeling. I wouldn't buy into that. And I wouldn't let people pull me in any direction they wanted. And it was like a big backlash actually of, it cost me a lot of relationships, for example. And it's interesting, that people who don't do the work or who don't really connect or figure out who they are, they'll just get whipped up and down and left and right by anything that happens. And it's terrible that they can succumb to that kind of influence.
Well, congratulations. Yeah, because when you let those people go, um, you attract ones who are in your vibration, right? And from a mindfulness perspective, so I call it either you're either leaning in the middle of the tornado, and that's those people that you're talking about getting whipped around by the tornado, or you're the observer. So when you're the mindful observer, you can be in that equanimous state and like, huh, I see why that's happening.
Mhm.
That doesn't feel good. I don't like that, but I see why it's happening. Um, and then as you continue to do the work, you realize that the people, here's another, I call it the colander effect. So, like, you're this vibrational being in this colander with all the holes. And when you start to really do the healing work on yourself, or getting out in nature, or listening to beautiful music, or getting away from the noise of social media and politics and all of that business, spending more time with your, fur babies, um, your vibration rises, and that which no longer is a vibrational match for you is going to fall out the holes, whether you do it or not.
Mhm.
And so that's relationships, that's habits, that's circumstances, that's where you live, all kinds of things. And the trick is to not do the yo-yo by going back to old wounds of saying, "Oh, I don't want that person to leave," or "That's a reflection of me," and grasping for the things that are trying to exit your experience,
Mhm.
but letting them go compassionately. Doesn't need to be a big drama,
Mhm.
it doesn't need to be like, "I never speak to you again," or whatever, but, usually it goes that way because you're no longer in that energy field.
Mm.
I mean, it's kinda like in video games, which I'm not a video game person, but my son is or was, and, non-player characters, right? So sometimes there are people that are just peripheral and some people that are just in your experience. And scientifically, there's the slit experiment, which I'm sure you're familiar with the slit experiment, where if it's not viewed, if your attention's not on it, it's not happening.
Mhm.
So, so I say bravo to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it took a while to get there, but it was an interesting journey. But I felt like I'd reached a kind of, I wouldn't say a better, like, I feel it was like just a better emotional place to be.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
emotional intelligence.
yeah. But it definitely came through nature and just connecting with things other than people, and in different ways of, and just spending time alone actually. Because I've always really believed like people don't spend enough time alone, because I feel when you spend time alone, all the questions are kind of answered, and you kind of do a deep dive on who you are and how you want to live, and no one does that. Like no one really spends the time to really figure out who they are.
Well, I would like to say that's not true. Um, People do that.
Mhm.
So maybe not the masses, but there are people that do that, and more people are doing it
Mhm.
more and more. And so that's why I believe that there's hope for us. And like, learn to be your own best friend. And there's not one way to this. So you found it in nature. I found it a different way. Some people do energy work, or some people do forms of yoga, or there's so many pathways to this. Just what resonates to you,
Mhm.
and then just keep following the breadcrumbs.
Yeah. I mean, you almost had to die.
Yeah, right, because I'm bullheaded. Um, so it needed to be, a big splash for me to get it. And my mother used to say that, "Why do you have to like run up against a brick wall?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
See if you can go through it.
Yeah. Huh?
I mean, how has your work been? Like you said, you set up a clinic, you've been working with people for years on this kind of stuff. Like where, I mean, is there some kind of generalization that you can offer the audience today, like about just your work that you've been doing since you kind of were enlightened by this, and are there any generalizations that you've kind of learned over the years of dealing with so many people without going into like one specific instance?
Oh, that's a lot of different questions, but let me see if I can unpack that. Um, I mean, what the work that I do predominantly now is kind of threefold.
Mm.
My three buckets are: I do private individual coaching, and I do that online. I have coaching programs, and I love that because I get to experience someone go through the process intimately, right? I call myself a flashlight. So you're the one that's doing it. I just get to shine the light on the shadowy places. Like,
And what is that process?
um, well, so I have my core program, and it's 8 weeks, and I call it mindful makeovers. It's videos that I created post near death experience, and And so they can do that on their own. And then those are the basics, like core concepts, tools, processes, energetic clearing processes. And then weekly on a Zoom, I get with my client and we talk about any questions about those videos. And then we talk about how the universe has reflected those patterns and those lessons in their life for that week, because it always happens. It's brilliant. And so, whatever is your hiccup, is the thing that you really are struggling with, you're stuck with, whatever, the universe is always giving you these opportunities to work through it. And so I shine the light on that and we work through it. People call me all kinds of different things, but you know, you can just coach is the platform.
Hmm.
I pull in spirituality, and again, this is not from a religious point of view, but the fact that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and for me, that's super important. Because without that connection, I think that people are missing a huge part of who they are. So those are coaching programs, and right now I'm running a 90-day for people who really want to start 2026 in a different framework. I'm doing a 90-day program. I'll send you the link. I think I sent it to you.
Yep.
Um, so that's the private coaching. I do corporate work. And so you can hire me to be a coach, just like a lot of people are opening up to the idea that we need some sort of wellness in their company. Some people are doing therapists, like having an open day for therapy, whether it's Zoom or whatever. So not everybody really wants to go to a therapist, and so having this, it's called the wellness coaching. Having that opportunity is what I do as the wellness director. So I do that. I have these micro learning programs that we do in workshops and things like that. Then I do meetings and events.
Mm.
So if those corporations are in the meetings and events industry, has a client, and then I do training. I do something called a mindfulness lounge where I teach people about mindfulness and have experiential meditation and journeys.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 hats.
And what I'm just curious,
Write
like,
books.
and you're right, Oaks. I'm just curious, like, what the response is in a corporate environment to all of this kind of desire for deeper understanding, because I feel like some elements of learning more about yourself and understanding your true self or connecting with people in a more meaningful way kind of goes against what is corporate America.
It's funny. Well, it's really about wellness,
Hmm.
front loading wellness when you're in the corporate environment. So remember when I was saying that, oh, I don't think I even told you that. So when I was getting the message that things were going to go in a different direction from the wellness center that we had, it was 6,000 square feet. We had a cafe. We did 4,000 classes since it was open, and, it was phenomenal. Tens of thousands of people came through there. But I knew that I kept hearing this word global, and I wasn't sure what that was about, but I'm like, okay. And how it came about is I got a phone call from someone in the meetings and events industry asking if they were referred to me as a wellness expert in Las Vegas. There's a big meeting planners conference in Las Vegas every year, and they wanted to open up their offerings into wellness. And so that's when I started doing wellness in meetings.
And
And it was about meditation and mindfulness for stress relief. So the umbrella was stress is not a requirement to get the job done, right? It's not a badge of honor. And so many people carry around stress like a badge of honor. Well, when that happens, then you lose focus, you lose creativity, you start getting burnt out. You have absenteeism, you have presenteeism, which is people there but not really there, not really working, right? And so that affects the bottom line. So all of a sudden, corporations do want wellness because it affects their bottom line. So I'm not talking about the spiritual aspect of wellness or their emotional intelligence. I'm talking about teaching people how to not burn out and how to take care of themselves first. And that does come from the space of self love and self care. So, personal responsibility in that arena. And that's more the message, mindfulness, that's more the message in the corporate arena. But more and more people are understanding that it's a necessity.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sometimes I think back and or lean back and just, you know, look up at the sky and figure out like what would the world look like if we all didn't have to like work and make a living? Like, can you imagine?
I said that today.
Yeah.
I said it today.
Yeah, just like, if we didn't spend hours commuting in a car, if we didn't spend hours sitting in front of laptops or computers trying to move numbers around or however we make a living, like if we just had that space to just be outside, to
I
be
want that.
mindful. Yeah.
I want that.
Could be nice, right?
Mhm.
Like, but that's it. Like, we've just become so, like, if you go back to this idea that, we were all hunter gatherers at some stage, and forget about the fact that we only lived till 30, 10,000 years ago, and now we, live till 80 or whatever. But that, we might have lived more in that 30 years than we do now in 80. Like, you just don't know. But it feels like we've broken all of these connections to nature and to understanding ourselves, that I feel like, these were universal truths that we've somehow like stamped out.
Ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
Mhm. But I think it's coming back. I think that,
But sorry to that shows you how bad it's getting. Like, society now is getting so bad, and the quality of life is getting so bad, and young people who are coming into to their consciousness in their late teens and 20s and things like this, and they're trying to figure out like how to make it in the world. They're starting to reject everything that's been built thus far. I think that's really why
it
mindfulness.
needed to implode.
Yeah.
Right. So it's the contrast, right? So unless we have contrast, nobody learns anything.
Mhm.
So you can feel it, can't you? You can't, can you feel the implosion?
I feel like something is on the cusp on a daily basis. Like, like the world just can't keep going down this path.
Right.
Like, there's multiple wars going on. There's leaders of state just saying ridiculous stuff all the time. There's people there's people who are planting fear in society to financially benefit on a
Mhm.
daily basis. And, whether it's the pharmaceutical industry, whether it's the defense industry, whether whoever, like, I feel like the mind manipulation and the societal manipulation has gone so far, and too far, that we're all, that there's going to be like a mass rejection of that way of life.
Yeah, and I think if people realized that their thoughts and their words that they speak are creating their reality, if they knew that, and there's science behind that, it's not just, woo woo,
Hmm.
um, that they could change the outcome of things by just changing their own thoughts and their own words that they speak. Because you're either nourishing yourself and others with your words or you're poisoning them. And, I love the little book, Hidden Messages in Water by Dr. Emoto. Little book, but it gives a great little visual of what words can do to water.
Mm.
There's a lot of science about water and it being a conductor. Anyway, um, so if we take the power back that we are creating a reality. You don't like your reality? Well, only look in the mirror, right? So not looking for somebody else to fix it, but getting off of the feed that is perpetuating the negativity. If you're incredibly fearful of war and all you do is put data in from your eyes and your ears, right, about war, and that feeds that fear, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm.
So we need to shift our self-fulfilling prophecy and be working on our inner peace. And for most people, that could be a lifelong, you know, lifelong work. But do it.
It's interesting. Like, I've had the chance to live in China. I've had the chance to live in the Middle East, and then in Europe, and now here in the United States. And I can say by far that this country is the most toxic country I've ever lived in. And it's interesting because, you get dragged into what the news media says on a daily basis, which is just kind of perpetuating fear into everyone so that they consume in different ways. Then you've got people around us, commenting on the way things should be, or left right politics or whatever, and that's also really toxic. And the funny thing is that the healthiest and the most relaxing place I've ever lived in my whole life was China, even though I lived in a mega city with 30 million people. But I couldn't read the local news because it was in written Mandarin, Putonghua, and then I didn't ever search out local television news because I couldn't really listen to it. Like my Chinese was at an intermediate level, and I just tuned out. And then the people all around me, they wouldn't even speak. A lot of them wouldn't even speak Mandarin or Putonghua. They would speak Shanghai Hua, Shanghainese, which was their own dialect, which I couldn't understand. And it was really just 18 years of bliss because I just didn't know what was going on and I didn't care. And I was in the news media, like I was working for the New York Times, I was working for Time, Newsweek, Forbes, and Fortune. And so I was doing all these international stories about China, but none of it was really affecting my daily life or the people I was connected to or communicating with. And there was just a huge piece. Like, think about how many people wake up in the morning in this country and the first thing that comes out of their mouth isn't "I love you" if you have a spouse or a partner or a child or pets, but the first thing is, "Oh, I can't believe what Trump said yesterday," or "I can't believe what Biden did to you." It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, but we're just consumed by this negativity, and it's like the first thing we talk about in the morning, and it's like the last thing we talk about at night, and all day long, you can't escape it. And, like, what is that doing to our soul on a daily basis?
Well, you can escape it. You can. It's a choice,
Right.
and it's reprogramming.
Mm.
So,
Or
yeah, what it's doing, right? It's taking our humanity. That's what it's doing because the purpose of all of that is to divide
Yeah.
all the labels, right? Think about all the labels, or even in my lifetime, you can just keep charting all the labels and all the division when it's just humanity. I don't know who I heard say this, but I loved it. It's like, it might have, what, Gregg Braden, I don't know. But what sex is your soul?
what sex is your soul?
Yeah. So when your soul is, out of body,
Mhm.
does your soul have a sex?
I would say no. I think the sex is connected to our meat suit that
Right.
we eventually leave, and
That's
and
right.
yeah.
And so it's one of the things that we fight over
Yep.
right here on the planet, and it has nothing to do with who we really are, which is our soul, our spirit.
Yeah.
Um, so
Or what color we are.
right. I'm like, and I tell people, I'm like, you've been everything. So for you to, judge somebody for their color or their sexuality or whatever, I'm like, you're just judging yourself because you have been everything.
Or religion.
Yeah, our
Yeah.
religion, right?
On a little aside, one of my favorite comedians once said that no one ever beheaded anyone or went to war against anyone in the name of atheism.
It's funny.
Yeah. Like if you
It's true.
if you believe in something bigger, and you believe that kind of man-made.
Who was that?
It was Louis C.K.
Okay.
Yeah, who was slightly controversial after his issues that he had, I guess, in the late teens of 2017, 2018, where he had some issues, but he's back and he's still funny.
Okay. As long as it makes you laugh.
But yeah, it's so like, where do we, as we start to wrap this up, like, where do we go from here? Like, if people are tired of where they are in their own heads, and they're tired of, and they want to start 2026 in a more meaningful way, and try to find a way of being more connected to people or more connected to nature or whatever it is that brings them that peace. Where do you suggest people start?
Um,
I think the first step's always the hardest, right?
Choosing,
Yeah.
right? Choosing. And the first step I find, like in my program, I start with awareness because until you are aware of, let's say, your thoughts and the things that you're saying to yourself and your wounds, then you're not going to do anything about them, right? It's just kind of like, la, 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 la. Um, but there's a great book called Self Observation by Red Hawk. Great book. And it's not new, it's been out for a long time, but it helps you do a self review and track your patterns. because if you have certain wounds, um, and traumas that are affecting your life, they've been affecting your life your entire life. So, in other words, your brain is in theta state when you're very young, so 0 to 7 years old, I think it is. And that's hypnosis. So everything that you've taken in when you were that young, that you listened to, you heard, you saw going on around you, that was all programming you for your future. So if you had trauma there, like, alcoholic, uh, parent or something like that, or single parent or any kind of trauma, then, and not saying the single parents are trauma. Got to correct that before somebody corrects.
Mhm.
Um, but any kind of, challenge maybe, then you can look at your life and see where you had hiccups in your life and see where there were different faces, right? Different circumstances, but the pattern was the same.
Mm.
So then you can start shifting. Once you're aware, once you see it, you can then start shifting yourself. And again, I think we just start with ourselves with self-love because I everybody can start with that. And most people don't know how to love themselves, truly love themselves. And I don't mean I'm going to go buy this thing on Amazon to love myself
Mm.
or I deserve that meal out because I love myself. I'm talking about the inner journey.
Mhm.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think, because I think the first step is the hardest. Like, I think the majority of people wanna change something about their lives at some stage, and I feel like people are feeling less connected to their friends or their spouses or to their loved ones or to nature or to who they are, to their soul.
Mm.
Like, it's almost like because I talk to people a lot and I travel around a lot, and I feel like people are so conflicted internally now, maybe more than ever, where, it's almost like they're fighting against themselves all the time. And it's almost like their humanity is fighting against everything that's special and makes them beautiful about being human is trying to resurface all the shit that's just been piled on top of that for 30 or 40 years of people who are, middle aged. And I just feel like, yeah, like how do you get out from under that avalanche of garbage, that we're all kind of living with.
Giving yourself permission to do it,
Mm.
number one, because the ego is a very interesting thing as well. Because one of the reasons why I say this is what I know to be true for me today now is because I give myself permission to change. And a lot of people don't give themselves permission to change. And also, people around other people don't give them permission to change. And in other words, so you start growing, you start changing, and your family or the people around you want you to stay small,
Mhm.
right? So a lot of times people have to move, like physically move, to be able to be their authentic self.
I had to go to China.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I went all the way across the world.
There's a story there. I want to get to it.
No, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, my parents were amazing, and they didn't. I mean, but I felt like the society that I was in, maybe less my inner circle, but more the society that I was in wasn't fulfilling me in a way that I wanted, and I felt like I needed to get out and grow in a way that my living in Toronto, Canada, at the 22 wasn't going to allow me to do. So that's why I moved
Takes
half.
courage.
Yeah, or just random, following random impulses and
Use.
youth. Yeah, but again too, it's like setting yourself up for a life of mobility. Like I think this is really important too. It's like the freedom of movement is in my mind really important because I think for generations and centuries, thousands of years, we've always been people who moved. And I think that, okay, obviously the invention of farming and creating, towns and cities as a way of defending ourselves against other people and a way of having, stable food sources and things like that, obviously hugely important to the growth of civilization. But there's a part of us that still wants to move and that still wants to see new things and learn new things. And I think, when you give yourself that, it fulfills you in a way that nothing else can fulfill you. And I think that's why travel is so addictive. And that's why people go on vacations and love taking pictures on vacations and love remembering what they saw and who they met on vacations, because It fulfills them in a way that used to be normal, but now is no longer because of the way we've constructed our society. We're all just stuck. And that freedom of movement, and that ability to connect with people of different languages, different cultures,
Oh,
different
it's the best
backgrounds,
education ever.
right? But it does something to our soul. It feeds our soul in a way that nothing else does.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. So you've been here for a couple of years. Do you see yourself staying?
No, no, definitely not.
Don't think about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've got a visa, it expires in a few more years, and then I'll leave and go somewhere else. Like, because I feel like the journey is not over. Like and this is, Los Angeles is a very desirable place to spend time. The weather's lovely and everything like that. But the United States, it's a challenging place to live. Like, and again, it's just hearing all this stuff coming at you in English all the time, which is also my native language. But you can't hide from all that negativity, and unless you're unless you've made a real conscious effort to change, and you're really strong at keeping all that shit out, some of it does seep in and it does affect you. I much prefer living in a country where I don't speak the language, because I find I find my existence and the way of living, I feel much happier. I feel like it's much less of a effort to block out all the negativity because I just don't pay attention because it's in a different language.
Have
I
you
actually,
explored the other parts of the country?
I mean, yeah, I mean, this is a particularly toxic city to live in a particularly toxic state. I get that too. But even if you lived in, North Dakota in the middle of nowhere, you're still susceptible to people around you talking about what's on the news every day, or the news does seep in from time to time. So I feel like even if you were in a more ice, I mean, Alaska might be the option if I were to stay in the United States and just really, really check out.
Yeah.
That might be okay. But I still feel like there's other countries I still want to live in. And all of them will be as messy as what's going on here in the United States. But it's like I lived in Switzerland for 2 years and I didn't even know who the president of the country was. You know how amazing that is to just know that everything's going to be okay,
Yeah.
and that you don't have to read the German news, because I was living just outside Zurich. Like, you don't have to read the German news or listen to the Swiss German television broadcasts, and you don't even know who the president is, and you know that the trains are still going to run on time, and the banks aren't going to go. People aren't going to do a run on the banks, right? And you just live your life.
You said something very important. You said you just knew that everything was going to be okay. So where does that come from? Just knowing that everything's going to be okay. Because a lot of people would say that because they have a spiritual connection to a higher power.
I think it's just the desire to live in a calm place where people are really rational.
Okay.
And this isn't an advertisement for Swiss tourism or anything, but that's a country that's really kind of dull, and people make jokes about the people being quite boring, and they're bankers and lawyers, and they go to work and then they go up in the mountains on the weekend. Like, they live a pretty nice life, I think, and a high standard of living, but they're quote unquote kind of boring. But that's kind of nice too. Like, you're just kind of surrounded by beautiful nature, and there's no reason to go crazy.
Yeah.
People who live there aren't trying to go crazy to get attention, to make money,
Yeah.
which is what I think is just happening kind of everywhere else in the world. So it was nice to kind of check out, and again, checking out, like, again, 18 years in China, just being able to check out of local politics and all these conversations around you happening all the time. And it was like living in a little bubble of your own happiness. And I think there's something to that. I don't know if anyone studied that, but there's some kind of like behavioral scientific element there that needs to be looked at.
A bubble of your own happiness. Yeah. We should do something with that.
Yeah, and no one can puncture it. It's amazing because in order for someone to puncture it, the entire country would have to change to an English language broadcast, or everyone around you would have to start speaking English.
I don't know. I think you can have a bubble of your own happiness anywhere. I don't think it has to be in a place that you don't speak the language.
Until you hit the 10 at 4 p.m. on a Thursday or a Wednesday, right? Like,
Not to be LA. But I mean, I moved to Missouri for a minute, and that was a bubble.
yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I can see. Yeah, yeah, smaller towns, places where people are more
And
connected.
they're kind.
Yeah.
And you're riding down the dirt road and everybody waves. People are helpful. Something happens and everybody goes.
Mhm.
I wasn't really crazy about the tornado silence, but yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that. But again, too, like the world is a big and beautiful place. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, like I'd love to spend a year in Bhutan. Like that's on the map. Like obviously, I've spent a lot of time in Tibet. I've made a lot of TV shows in Tibet. I've been through all Nepal. But spending a year in Bhutan would be really interesting because that's a way of life that is, in a lot of ways, I think they're way more elevated and really much more connected than we are because they've taken a lot of the things that have ruined our society and kind of done away with them in a lot of ways. And I feel like people there are much more connected to nature and to each other. And obviously, you can do that in a small place where there's not a lot of people, but it could be
What did
nice.
they take away? So they
I think they took away this desire to just constantly make money and focus on earning money as being the sole importance of life, and they took away the importance of having material things. Um, and they focused on spirituality, and that's a man-made religion, which I do have issues with because I feel like humans are pretty flawed, and by definition, probably a lot of man-made things are pretty flawed, and I kind of feel like man-made religion is pretty flawed. But they have a respect and a connection to nature that's unparalleled, and the religion of Tibetan people before Buddhism came in from India was actually the Bon religion, which is kind of paganist and it actually worships nature. So there's the god of the air, the god of the water, the god of the soil, and all this kind of stuff. And there was like a deep connection and respect for nature. And then when Buddhism came from India, the Tibetans kind of adapted their own kind of Buddhism, which still has this great respect for nature. So they kind of like twisted a little bit of what came from India and made it a little bit their own. And it's just a very peaceful place.
Did
Like,
you spend any time with the monks?
oh yeah, like I would do these like when I would do these 2 and 3 week walks when I was living in Shanghai, I would do them in Tibet. So it was just a 2 hour flight, like a 3 hour flight. You go to Tibet, you hire a car, they drive you out like 3 hours. They drop you off at the side of the road with your bags, and then some guy comes and picks you up on a donkey.
Sherpa.
Yeah, and then you just go walking in the mountains, and then and then when you come back, you call the guy who picks you up, takes you back to the airport. Like
Fantastic.
unbelievable. It was pretty special.
Very cool.
Yeah, haven't found anything quite like that over here yet.
You haven't explored.
No, getting there. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you?
Oh, there are many things we haven't talked about, but I think that's for another time. I think my car is probably towed by now.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, no, I think so. I think we're good. Anything that
no, I just hope that people start living a little bit more, start living in a way that's a little bit more focused on respecting and trying to elevate what it means to be human.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. And now's the time.
now's the time.
Yeah, especially like we're moving into the holiday season, right? And let's start now, this holiday,
Mhm.
that we make it more about people and families. It doesn't have to be real families, right? You create your family,
Mhm.
especially if we're talking about shifting in vibrations and things like that, right? That not everyone is in alignment, right? You might not be able to get to your family, but make your community,
Mhm.
create it.
Yeah, that's nice. So, if people want to connect with you and your books, or you for any kind of coaching or advice and things like that, where can people find you?
On the coaching side, leepapa.com, leepapa.com. On the corporate side, the wellnessdirector.com. And Live Mindfully is, I'm sorry, I forgot what my handle was for Instagram. Um, Live Mindfully. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have your Linktree link, which I'll put so it has all your books there and stuff. So I'll add that to the podcast as well, so that people can connect with that.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
It was
coming in.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate the chance just to chat about this stuff because it's something I think about quite a bit. But you've articulated it in a way and had your own experiences that are kind of beyond anything I've gone through. So I really appreciate you being so open and sharing
Yeah.
everything.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
And we just go up here now so that people can see we're in the same room. So we're not on Zoom. Lee, wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Take care.